The Atlanta Falcons are at the center of a big question right now. Could they make one of the most significant trades in the team's history? Recently, rumors have been swirling, and today we're diving into the possibility of the Falcons pulling off a blockbuster move. So make sure to hit that like button and stay tuned, because we're about to explore what could be a game-changing decision for this team. The buzz has centered around Micah Parsons and his future with the Dallas Cowboys. While there's no concrete evidence that the Falcons are actively pursuing a trade, the speculation raises some intriguing questions. These questions have the potential to shake up the Falcons' future, and they're not just some wild rumors floating around for attention. There are legitimate reasons why a Parsons trade, though unlikely, could still be on the table. Let's break it down. The Cowboys are facing a tight financial situation, and with the salary cap continuing to rise, elite player contracts are becoming more expensive. We've seen it before, like when Jamar Chase reset the wide receiver market, or when Myles Garrett set a new standard for defensive players. With every new deal, Parsons' price tag climbs higher, and Dallas is known for taking its time with contract extensions. This is where things get interesting. If Parsons demands $42 million a year, something that's very possible given where contracts are headed, does Jerry Jones really want to pay up? The Cowboys have already committed major money to Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. After a tough season, does Dallas want to lock up even more of their future cap space in one player? Or would they consider moving Parsons for multiple first-round picks, helping reset the roster and avoid a massive payout? Let's be clear, there's no official report that the Cowboys are shopping Parsons. But there have been some whispers, with Cowboys insiders hinting at tension between Parsons and the organization. Reports suggest that his outspoken personality and off-field behavior may not be sitting well with the front office. While this doesn't mean a trade is imminent, it does raise an important question. Could the Cowboys be willing to move on from their star pass rusher? If the Cowboys did decide to trade Micah Parsons, the Atlanta Falcons would be a perfect fit as a trade partner. The Falcons have been desperately searching for an elite pass rusher for years. They missed out on top free agents this offseason, and their track record in the draft when it comes to edge rushers has been, to put it mildly, less than impressive. Instead of rolling the dice on another draft pick that might not work out, could they take the safer route and trade for Parsons, even if it means giving up multiple first-round picks? So, what would a trade look like? The asking price would be steep, likely around 2 first-round picks and a third-rounder. That might seem like a lot, but when you consider what Khalil Mack fetched at his peak, a similar package starts to feel more reasonable. The real question is whether Dallas would actually be willing to part ways with Parsons, or if this is just a hypothetical scenario that never materializes. Then there's the contract situation. If the Falcons pulled the trigger on this trade, they'd need to extend Parsons immediately, likely for a deal in the range of 4 years, $168 million, with at least $115 million guaranteed. That's a huge financial commitment, but Parsons is one of the best defensive players in the league. He's a game changer, someone who can elevate an entire defense on his own. Now, let's play out a what if. What if the Falcons had made this trade a few years ago, say back in 2021? That would mean no Bijan Robinson, no Drake London, but it also means no Vic Beasley, no Takarist McKinley, and no Duke Riley, players who were expected to be the solution to Atlanta's pass rush problems. It's a trade-off worth considering. But that's where the dilemma lies. Do you trust your ability to draft well, or do you go all in on a proven superstar? If the Falcons truly believe they're just a pass rusher away from being contenders, then acquiring someone like Micah Parsons could be the move that puts them over the top. However, if they're not convinced, they risk giving up too much valuable draft capital for a single player in a league where depth is key. So now, I turn it over to you, Falcons fans. Would you trade 2 first-round picks for Micah Parsons? Would you commit $42 million per year to one defensive player, or do you trust the front office to finally nail the draft picks? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This is where the conversation gets even more interesting because the Falcons are at a crossroads. Do they keep playing the long game, hoping their draft picks will eventually develop into elite talent, or do they take a massive swing and land a player who could transform their defense overnight? Because let's face it, when was the last time Atlanta had a true defensive superstar? Think about it. The Falcons haven't had a defensive player who strikes fear into opposing quarterbacks since the days of John Abraham, and that was over a decade ago. That's why this conversation is so important. Atlanta has been searching for that dominant edge rusher for years. Time after time, they've either missed in the draft or settled for short-term fixes in free agency. If Parsons were available, and that's a big if, he'd be the type of player who could immediately turn Atlanta's defense into a real threat. We've seen what he can do in Dallas. He's not just a pass rusher, he's a game wrecker. He can drop into coverage, stop the run, and most importantly, he gets to the quarterback at an elite level. That's something the Falcons haven't had in years. But let's not overlook the other side of the argument. Making a move like this comes with risks. You'd be giving up valuable draft capital, which would limit your ability to add depth at other key positions. If Parsons gets hurt or doesn't live up to the massive contract he demands, the Falcons could be stuck with a deal that takes up a huge portion of their salary cap. That's the gamble. And here's another thing to consider. Would trading for Parsons truly make Atlanta a Super Bowl contender? That's the ultimate goal, right? If you're making this kind of bold move, it's because you believe you're on the verge of something special. But are the Falcons really there yet? Kirk Cousins is coming in as the new franchise quarterback, but he's 36 and recovering from an Achilles injury. The offensive line has some question marks after losing Drew Dalman in free agency. And while the secondary has talent, it's still a work in progress. So what's the best move? If Parsons becomes available, there's no doubt the Falcons should pick up the phone and explore the opportunity. But does this front office have the guts to pull the trigger? That's the real question. Terry Fontenot has been careful in his approach, opting for patience rather than making flashy moves. Would he break that pattern for a player like Parsons? At the end of the day, this is the kind of decision that defines franchises. If the Falcons believe Parsons is the missing piece, then they should go for it. If they don't, then they better make sure they nail their draft picks. The Falcons fan base isn't going to wait much longer for this defense to be fixed. So, how do the Falcons take that next step? Whether they trade for Micah Parsons or not, one thing is clear. This defense needs a true difference maker. The longer they wait, the more they risk wasting what could be a prime window to compete. Think about the moves the Falcons have already made this offseason. Kirk Cousins is now in place as the starting quarterback, giving Atlanta stability at a position that's been uncertain since Matt Ryan's departure. The offensive weapons are there: Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. But what about the defense? Yes, Atlanta added Leonard Floyd, Jordan Fuller, and Davino Ziegler. Those are solid pieces, but let's be honest, none of them are game changers at the level of Parsons. Floyd is a solid veteran pass rusher, but at 32 years old, he's not a long-term solution. Fuller and Ziegler are nice additions, but they won't turn this defense into an elite unit overnight. That's why this conversation is so crucial. If the Falcons believe they're just one dominant defensive player away from competing for an NFC championship, then Parsons might be worth the price. But if they're still a few years away from being serious contenders, maybe holding on to those first-round picks and continuing to build through the draft is the better path. And let's not forget there's another layer to all of this. If the Falcons don't trade for Parsons, they must nail their draft picks. This team cannot afford another failed pass rusher selection. We've seen it before. Vic Beasley, Takaris McKinley, even going back to guys like Jamal Anderson. Atlanta's track record with drafting edge rushers has been rough, to say the least. Now, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Go Falcons!